There were giants in the earth in those days. And also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. Genesis 6:4.
Have you heard of the giant race of Britain? Everyone knows the first line of the English fairy tale, Fee, Fi, Fo, Fum, but do you know the rest of the verse that says, I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread. The origin of that can be traced to the oral histories of England. Yes, England. But why is this important? All of the giant races trace back to specific tribes from two of the sons of Noah. We want to focus on Gog and Magog. Who are they? And what is the connection to Britain? Here in this picture, you see Guildhall, and these two giants are named Gog and Magog. They are the official symbols of the city of London. You see one holding a shield and spear, and the other is holding a spiked ball hanging from a pole. In Genesis 6, the Bible tells us that the giants were the descendants of the fallen angels and the daughters of men. Yes, rogue angels mated with humans. But is there a connection between the descendants of the fallen angels and the ruling class of the Gentiles? Let's talk about it on today's session. Gog and Magog, who are they and why do we need to know about them? This information is taken from Encyclopedia Britannica. It says, in the Revelation to John, the names Gog and Magog are applied to the evil forces that will join with Satan in the great struggle at the end of time. It goes on to say that wherever it was, the names of Gog and Magog first appear in the Hebrew Bible with reference to Magog, son of Japheth, in the book of Genesis. Then Gog, the king of Magog, appears in the Old Testament in Ezekiel 38:2 as the instigator of a terrible battle. Gog was referred to as being a person, and Magog was the land he was from. Similar stories are echoed in the book of Revelation and the Quran. The tradition is sparse and confused as Gog and Magog are presented as men, supernatural beings, giants, and demons. Gog, Magog, and Gog, Magot are identified with giants in Spenser's Fairy Queen, 1590. And in the medieval legends of Alexander. The names even reached Cambridge in eastern England, where the hilly area became known as the Gog-Magog Hills, where interestingly some taller than average skeletons were unearthed in the 1800s. Another, later version of the story describes how the giants Gog and Magog were two people and were taken prisoners and forced to become porters at the royal palace, now the London Guildhall. The effigies of Gog and Magog have remained at the Guildhall since the reign of Henry V in the gigantic history of the two famous giants of Guildhall. It proclaims that Gog, Magog, and Quirinius were in fact two giants. Additionally, there is a connection between Magog and Ashkenaz. It says the Magogites, according to Josephus, were later known to the Greeks as Scythians. The Scythians have since come to be identified with the Ashkenazi of Assyrian inscription. More likely, according to Bill Cooper, is that early Magogites were assimilated into the peoples of Ashkenaz and thus making up merely a part of the Scythian hordes. Eschatological Gog, Magog refers to the Antichrist in the Gospels of 1 John, 2 John, 2 Thessalonians, and the book of Revelation, and the King of the North in Daniel chapters 11 and 12. Various interpretation of just how far north exists, from Turkey to Europe to Russia. Turkey because Turkic peoples such as Meshech, Tubal, and Togarmah are implicated by Ezekiel 38, and or Eastern Europe rather than Russia appear implicated. But Gog, Magog may refer to a person connected to these lands by extension, such as one who comes in the name of Rome, rather than necessarily their inhabitant. As one nomadic people followed another on the Eurasian steppes, so the identification of Gog and Magog shifted. In the 9th and 10th centuries, these kingdoms were identified by some with the lands of the Khazars, a Turkic people who had converted to Judaism and whose empire dominated Central Asia. The 9th century monk, Christian of Stavelot, referred to Ghazari, said of the Khazars, they were living in the lands of Gog and Magog, and noted that they were circumcised and observing all the laws of Judaism. Arab traveler Ibn Fadlan also reported of this belief. Writing around 921, he recorded that some hold the opinion that Gog and Magog are the Khazars. Although we have several European countries with possible connections to giants, there is only one country openly celebrating Gog and Magog for centuries: Britain. The effigies of Gog and Magog have remained at the Guildhall since the reign of Henry V, and they are celebrated every year during the Lord Mayor's Parade. Is there a biblical connection between giants and Europeans? We see several verses letting us know that Mizraim, also known as Egypt, who was one of the sons of Ham, had giants in his lineage. Why? Because the Bible tells us that David fought with Goliath, the Philistine, and he had 4 brothers who were also giants. Let's read these verses. Genesis 10:13 through 14. Mizraim begot Ludim, Anamim, Lehabim, Naphtuhim, Pathrusim, and Cashluhim, from whom came the Philistines and Captorim. Amos 9 and 7. Are you not like the people of Ethiopia to me, O children of Israel, says the Lord? Did I not bring up Israel from the land of Egypt, the Philistines from Captor, and the Syrians from Kir? Jeremiah 7:4. Because of the day that comes to plunder all the Philistines, to cut off from Tyre and Sidon every helper who remains, for the Lord shall plunder the Philistines, the remnant of the country of Captor.
State-of-the-art DNA testing on the ancient Philistine bones showed they came from Europe more than 3,000 years ago.
We've been able to demonstrate for the first time that the Philistines were immigrants to the region of Philistia.
Ancient Philistia was located along the modern-day southern coast of Israel and Gaza. Archaeologist Daniel Master headed the Leon Levy expedition to Ashkelon.
In the 13th and 12th century, empires collapsed. Indeed, much of civilization collapsed. And when people woke up 100 years later, the world was very different. One of the groups that people noticed were the Philistines.
Master said the DNA confirmed what they already believed.
From the early 20th century, people noticed that the styles of pottery that they were finding in the area called Philistia by the writers of the Hebrew Bible were similar to pottery that was found in Greece just 100 years earlier. And people started to draw the connection that perhaps this pottery indicated some connection between these two groups of people.
Ashkelon was one of 5 big Philistine cities. The Philistines lived there for about 600 years.
The Philistines appear in the Hebrew Bible as one of the great enemies of the Israelites. But where did they come from? In the Bible, there's a mention that the Philistines came from Caphtor. This is a mention in Amos, many centuries after we think the Philistines arrived. This place was probably related to Crete.
The earliest traditions agree that the first inhabitants of Britain were of the Tal persuasion. Some say they were descendants of Noah's son Ham and came from Africa about 4,000 years ago. Other versions state that Noah's son Japheth had arrived even earlier. Now let's get back to Gog and Magog. The 16th century scribe Raphael Holinshed wrote in Chronicles of England, Scotland, and Ireland that Britain's oldest acknowledged name was taken from a prehistoric king named Albion, who ruled a race of giants that dominated the UK for hundreds, possibly thousands of years. Here you see the wooden statues of Gog and Magog as they stand guard outside the entrance of Guildhall. They were destroyed in an air raid in 1940. Today, Gog and Magog are considered the traditional guardians of the City of London, and images of the two have been carried in the Lord Mayor's show since the reign of Henry V. European medieval towns often had giants whose effigies were carried in procession. What you need to understand is that this parade was founded by King John Lackland. But in order to get the full meaning of this, you need to know the true last name of King John. It wasn't Lackland. It was Plantagenet. I encourage you to read the history of the Plantagenets, and you will see how extremely wicked they were. Some call them the devil's brood. Did you know that all of the United States presidents are related to King John except one? And it was discovered by a 7th grader. This article says a California 7th grader and her 80-year-old grandfather are allegedly the first people to discover that President Barack Obama is related to all other U.S. presidents except one. Bridge Ann traced that Obama and all other U.S. presidents except Martin Van Buren are all related to John Lackland Plantagenet, a king of England and signer of the Magna Carta. Let's take a look at this silver penny that was minted for King John. Here you see this is supposed to be his picture inside of the triangle. He's holding a cruciform scepter and he has a rosette to the right, all within the triangle. You may remember some of these symbols, pagan symbols, from a previous lesson that we did. Here you see the half moon, the crescent moon, and the sun, and you have your stars, and then you have your 3 crosses also on the coin. We see the coin here also, and I want to direct your attention to what's written here. It says the triangle on both sides of this coin is believed to represent the shape of Ireland. The star and moon on the reverse are symbols of the Plantagenet dynasty founded by Henry II. Hopefully you're beginning to wonder about those who are allowed to rule. I would also like for you to understand how they rule. The 2 main ways are with weapons and deceit. Another way is called symbolic power. Symbolic power is simply an ascribed power in which ability is automatically perceived without proving it. Symbolic power requires a dominator. It also requires the dominated to accept their position. They accept it through a process of inculcation, which is used to control and manipulate through symbols and re-education. We saw the symbols all the time without realizing what they were doing. For example, all of the pictures of Christ had to be white. Everybody in the Bible of any significance had to be white. The White House. All of the best things were associated with a certain color. Anything black was bad. Our education system told us that we were the barbarians and the savages. We were pagans and we needed to be civilized. All of the things that they were, they transferred onto us. We're now learning that having melanated skin is the best. We're not savages. They were. We are not Gentiles. They are. But do you see the genetic root of the bloodline that's doing this? The Bible says that Satan comes to kill, steal, and destroy. Just knowing that we are the people of the book is changing the social hierarchy. Our Father said, "My people are destroyed because they lack knowledge." Isn't it time to help our people learn the truth? You can start by sharing this message and subscribing to help us spread the word about our true heritage. Shalom, everyone.